Okay, I show it's 4 minutes after 4. We're going to go ahead and start the meeting of the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission. First order of business is the call to order. Could you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Harris?
Here.
Commissioner Grooms?
Here.
Commissioner Moulton?
Here.
Commissioner Banks?
Here.
Vice Chairman Derryberry?
Here.
Chairman Sturdivant?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to let the rest of the board members know, if you don't already, Commissioner Stoltz has resigned from the commission to pursue his ambitions with the College Board. And I, for one, really appreciate his attendance on this board. He was very forthright in asking some really insightful questions over his 18 months here. And I know he's going to be an asset on the College Board, but I know we're going to miss him. And with that, all of us had to turn in applications to continue service on this board. And I believe in the next few months, the mayor will be making appointments to fill out boards that are lacking members at this time.
Yes, that'll be on the agenda on January 24th.
Oh, okay.
And so whoever has decided not to serve should stay on the boards until that decision has been made.
Oh, okay. Okay. I've asked Bishop Hearns to give us an invocation. I gave him very little notice of this, so we really appreciate you doing this.
He doesn't mind, I'm sure.
Let me tell you, praying to me is not something I have to write or think about. I just love the Lord, and I don't think I can do without Him. I believe that everybody who's have responsibilities probably needs help. And that's where we are with that. If you don't mind, as I give the prayer, I have the eye closed, and certainly not against anybody. I know. With that in mind, that prayer. Father, we thank you for this wonderful opportunity. We thank you for these men and women who have set aside time to come together for the purpose, the common purpose, of making our community the best it can be. We thank you for them, and we recognize readily that we don't have an answer for all of the concerns and questions. But what we do know is that you know. And what we do also know is that if we ask you, you will help us and give us the strength that we will be able to do that. So I pray for our chair and vice chair and all the members and everyone who is here, that whatever we do today will be for the best for our community and will bring a smile to your face. God, we thank you, and we pray this in the precious name of our Lord and Savior.
Thank you very much. Everybody will please remain standing. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item is any public business from the floor on agendized items. This is the time for citizens who would like to address the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission on any agendized item. Please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you would like to discuss. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Do we have any speakers?
No, we have no speaker cards this
Okay,
time.
thank you. The next item is the consent calendar. The only item on there is the approval of the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission meeting minutes of December 6, 2011. Do any commissioners have any additions, deletions, or changes?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion from Commissioner Derryberry and a second from Commissioner Banks. Everybody please vote. And the motion carries 6-0. Okay, the next item was going to be a report from the Deputy Executive Director of the LACDC on Housing Authority matters. Unfortunately, I received 2 phone calls that both individuals will not be able to attend today's meeting due to different circumstances. I do plan to invite them back to our next meeting because we've gone a number of months without a report from them, and I think we need an update. Okay, the next item is a discussion of the community impact from the California Public Safety Realignment Act. I'm very pleased to have Reaver Bingham from the County of Los Angeles Probation Department here to speak to us, and he will be followed by Chief James Lopez of the County Sheriff's Department.
Chairman Sturdivant and this esteemed commission, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you regarding AB 109, and I do bring you greetings from our new Chief, Jerry Powers, and he's delighted to be amongst us as well. What I'd like to do, if appropriate, is to, Anna Pabajian is here, and I want to defer. I don't know if she had introductory comments before I would speak, and if so, I'd like to defer to her. If that's...
Don't go. Good afternoon, Honorable Commission members. Happy New Year. I'm Supervisor Antonovich's Justice Deputy and liaison to the criminal justice agencies, state, federal, and local. And we are very pleased that you asked that this item be agendized. We are happy to be here with our county family to answer any questions that you may have, to share with you some information that we have preliminarily, being only 2 months, now 3 months into realignment, with December just having finished. So I am here. I will be available for questions throughout, but probation does have a very lead role in this realignment. So I'm going to have Reaver start this off unless you have any questions for me at this point in time. Okay, thank you.
Okay, as you know, back in April, the state enacted AB 109, which shifted the responsibility of certain low-level inmates to the care of the probation department. There were a number of components to this law that spoke of non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual offenders that would become the responsibility of the probation department and also the sheriff's department. And the first part of that, those individuals that we refer to as the post-release supervised persons, are those who are currently in state prison, who would, instead of being released to the Department of Parole, would now be released to the probation department. There's another population who will now be sentenced under AB 109 that will no longer be sentenced to state prison based on their offense, but would be do their time in the county jail. And Chief Lopez will talk about that population momentarily. But the state projected that the probation department would receive about 9,000 individuals this fiscal year under the new AB 109 or realignment model. And to date, we have actually received about 3,400 individuals into the various communities to which they are being released. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do in terms of determining eligibility and how we process these cases in, and then I'd like to walk through the questions that were sent to us if that's agreeable to you. But what the probation department has done, and we were appointed the lead for AB 109, but we work very collaboratively with all of our law enforcement agencies, the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Public Health, and the faith-based and community-based organizations to wrap services around these individuals. But one of the things that we were tasked with doing was to develop a comprehensive comprehensive plan for how we were going to respond to realignment. The state made certain assumptions about the number of individuals that we were going to receive. They funded it, used a certain formula to fund realignment throughout the state. The county received about $112 million to service the individuals for this fiscal year. That number increases to a little over $300 million for fiscal year 12-13, and that money is to be utilized to provide all of the supervision, the custody, care and treatment of individuals as they are being returned to the counties. But the probation department had to develop a comprehensive plan as to how we were going to deal with those individuals, and we did that in collaboration with the other law enforcement agencies that I mentioned previously. As a matter of fact, there was the Community Corrections Partnership, which was made up of all of the key stakeholders who developed a county-wide plan for how we would deal with individuals that are coming back, individuals that are going to be sentenced under the new law, and those are typically referred to as N3. Sometimes the N3 terminology is utilized to speak of the population in total, but you'll hear PSPs for those that are being paroled, N3s for those that are in the county jail. But we developed a comprehensive plan as a county to determine how we were going to deal with these individuals. What the probation department will do, we get a packet from CDCR, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Those packets will go to the probation department's pre-release center. We have a team of individuals there that will go through the packets, and then the packets will give us certain information about the individual's criminal history, and we will run a comprehensive criminal history. We don't just trust the information that comes from CDCR, but nonetheless, we'll go through that packet, which is about 25 to 30 pages long. It will give us history as to what they have been doing since they were in state prison, what their criminal history is, where they plan to live once they get out, and we'll go through that packet first to determine whether or not they're eligible for this program. Are they truly based on the current offense? And that's where it gets a little tricky, because when individuals hear non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual, the thought is that individuals that have ever been convicted of those types of offenses would not be eligible for this program, and that's just simply not true. The only thing that we're looking at on the front end, and Chief Lopez will talk about the N3s, those that are being convicted, because some of those individuals can go to state prison based on their past history. But for those that are being paroled or released to the community, they can have in their past a conviction for a serious violent or sex offense. But whatever the instant offense is or the current matter is what we have to look at to determine whether or not they are eligible. So once we determine that, yes, indeed, they are eligible for this program, then we will develop supervision strategies for them, determine where they're going to live, assign them to an office where they will go through a comprehensive intake. We look at the information that we get from CDCR to determine what preliminary information can we glean to determine what services they might need, and we make certain preliminary findings based on the packet. But once they are out, they go to one of our probation hubs where we take them through a comprehensive assessment, which includes an evidence-based risk assessment. We're using the level of service case management inventory, the LSCMI, to determine what their criminogenic risk factors might be. And we also refer them to the Department of Mental Health. If it's indicated that there has been a mental health history, we'll refer them to mental health for an assessment as well. We also refer them to the Department of Health Services, where they will go through a substance abuse assessment to determine if there are any needs in that area. Once we get all this information, we'll develop a comprehensive case plan that will be the roadmap as to how we are going to navigate them through this period of supervision. And you might have heard that if an individual is successful for 6 months, we can consider terminating probation if they are supervision. If they are successful for a year, then it's mandatory. And successful means that they do not have any violations on their record that actually led to sort of a revocation process. And if they are successful in that sense for a year, then we must terminate their supervision. So we have been in the process over the last 3 months, developing our staffing pool, working with the evidence-based curriculum. We have developed or have utilized will be utilized in an evidence-based curriculum that, in addition to their supervision conditions, we will take them through this curriculum. Currently, we're using Courage to Change, which helps them think differently about their decision-making process, and hopefully, as they think differently, they will begin to behave differently as well. Again, as I mentioned, we work very closely with the Sheriff's Department, with LAPD and other law enforcement agencies to do home assessments to make sure that individuals are going to live where they say they live. The first indication that we get in terms of determining what their housing situation is going to be is when we get the packet, they would have already spoken to a correctional counselor in the state prison, and the correctional counselor will ask them where they plan to live. They are assigned to counties based on their last county of legal residence. So they get that information is gleaned from the arrest report and also gleaned from the probation report. The probation report is the primary instrument. If the probation report does not provide that information, then they go to the arrest report. So that's how they determine the county of last legal residence. Beyond that, in terms of where they actually are going to live, that information is provided to us by the individual that's being released on supervision. And we take that information, we forward it to the Sheriff's Department, who will do a door knock and let us know whether or not it's actually a valid address and whether or not it's a suitable address. If we find that there are some issues there, then we'll continue to try to work with the correctional counselor prior to the individual getting out, so we can actually determine where they're going to live. And again, that's in the case of a bad address. But beyond that, we continue to work with them in terms of housing and that type of thing. As it relates to services, I know there was a question about, well, what type of services are we going to provide to these individuals? We recently had a sole source contract approved with the Haight-Ashbury organization, previously known as Walden House. And Walden House currently has a contract with CDCR and are providing services to this population. We have a sole source contract, which is a temporary measure to kind of bridge. We rolled out AB 109 October 1st, so we had to find the fastest way that we can deliver services to these individuals, the answer to that was to enter into the sole source contract with Walden House. That contract provides housing, some transportation, and employment services, and some systems navigation. Individuals that come out and maybe don't have a valid ID or driver's license, birth certificate, they'll help them secure those documents. Our primary purpose of the contract, or primary component of that contract, would be the housing piece. We're currently developing a statement of work that will ultimately be included in a RFP that we're going to be releasing in the next 30 days or so, which will address services for fiscal year 12-13 and beyond. So that information will be coming out momentarily. And again, we will be focusing on housing, some employment services, and transportation. The systems navigation piece we will probably not include, and I can talk more about that beyond 30 days. I can't say a whole lot about the RFP process, but there is a contract that will be coming out momentarily. Let me just provide just some information. Well, before I do that, let me just open it up for some questions, and then I'll speak specifically to the questions that you provided to us. Are there any questions on what I've already shared?
Yes, excuse me. I'd like to ask, when you say that their housing or where they're assigned is based upon the last county they were registered, is there any way for them to change where they're going to go outside of that information? Should they require, if like they have a relative here, or if they just choose they want to come here as opposed to going back to the county they were originally registered?
Well, initially, when we talk about where they're going to be assigned initially, they must be assigned to the county of last legal residence. But yes, there is a process. For example, if we had an individual that's released to L.A. County, and they will tell us subsequently that they have a better network of services, family members in Orange County or Riverside County, or then there is a process that is being developed. And I say being developed because unlike parole, that is a statewide organization and individuals can kind of move anywhere within the state because it's one entity supervising them, you essentially now have 58 different parole districts. So we have to work with that receiving county to determine whether or not they're willing to receive that individual, and then if so, then we can transfer supervision to that county. Now, within the LA County area, if a person communicates to us, let's just say they we affirm that they were their last county of legal residence is LA County, but prior to going to state prison, they lived in Long Beach. But they say, well, you know, my family has moved to Lancaster, then we will service such a transfer. We will do everything we can to try to determine that that is a valid address, that somebody's willing to allow them to stay there, and then we will effect that transfer.
But if they're going to transfer to another county, you're saying that county has to accept them. If they're transferring to another city, does that city has to accept them?
No, the city, there's no provision for the city to accept them, but county, yes.
Okay.
And the same would be true of the state, the same interstate compact. A person might tell us, and we've had a number of individuals that have family members out of state. The same interstate compact process would have to be employed to get those individuals transferred to another state. And, yes, sir.
Yeah, at the beginning of your talk, you talked about there being a population of about 9,000 in the first year.
Correct.
And then you said that 3,400 so far year to date have been received by your office?
Have been released, yes, correct.
Is that at a pace higher than 9,000?
It's we're in the 3 months.
Or was it heavy weighted at the beginning?
It actually, the projections have been very close to our actuals. I know that number, that 3,400 were about 400 over what the pace would be to get at the 9,000. But what we have seen so far has been very close to what the state has projected for us. For example, in October they projected that we would see 1,200. We saw right around 1,100. In November, I think it was a little over 1,000 they projected. We were right at about 1,000. So they've been very close relative to the projections.
It sounds like the first year is actually a 9-month year?
Yes,
okay.
Because we got started in October. Initially, we were supposed to we were going to roll it out in July, but the state, because of some other considerations, the date was moved to October.
Okay. Right. And then the second question I had, you mentioned $112 million available for this year,
right,
and $300 million for next year. Is the $300 million subject to the usual state budget battle that'll be commencing as you...
According, technically, yes. According to the governor, no. The governor has promised, and again, I know we have our own opinions about the promises that are made by the governor and by the state, but yes, it is subject to the budget process. The governor has gone on record affirming that he would do everything in his power to ensure that that money is protected. But that's one of the concerns that the board has, and rightfully so, as to whether or not the promises that are made by the state and the commitments relative to funding will actually pan out. That's one of the reasons, too, that there's a push to have constitutional protections as it relates to the funding.
Okay. And then the third question I had is the staffing level of your department.
Yes.
Was it already seriously impacted by the volume of probationers prior to this act occurring?
Yes, it was impacted. When you, and I'm glad you posed that question. I wanted to speak to the tiers, how we assign cases and what our supervision ratios are and that kind of thing, and I'll do that momentarily. But yes, the department was already impacted as it relates to the fact that we supervised 53,000 individuals on felony probation, and our average supervision ratio is about one probation officer to every 170 individuals. If you looked at what the APPA recommendations are, they would have you supervising at 1 to 30, and for certain types of caseloads, no more than 1 to 50. State parole now supervises at a 1 to 70, 1 to 75 ratio. And I should say that we do have administrative caseloads in that number. So when you look at how we break out caseloads according to risk, you may have some that are on administrative caseloads that get minimal services, but then you'll have others like sex offenders who are on 1 to 50, or family violence caseloads at 1 to 75, and that kind of thing. So we do look at the more serious types of offenses. But if you look at what some of the national standards are relative to supervision, yes, the department was impacted. But now the board did approve additional staffing for this population. And the way that we have initially looked at our supervision, the more serious offenders, and we are defining seriousness based on the risk assessments that I spoke of previously, and the review of packets as we receive them from CDCR, that our Tier 1 individuals, and those are the ones that are considered the more serious ones, would be on caseloads that are supervised at a rate of 1 to 50. If their medium risk is 1 to 75, and low risk would be 1 to 100. What we have actually found out, though, is that whereas we had initially projected that about 50% of the individuals would be high risk, we're finding that that's closer to about 64%. We thought maybe 25% would be medium risk. We're finding that that's more like 31, 32%, and the remaining 3 or 4% are low risk. So we'll be discussing that with the Chief Executive Officer and ultimately the board as to what that impact is going to be.
There's one population that I'm wondering how it's going to be calculated. This is the new population coming out of the courts, and the judge says, there's no room for you in the county jail, there's no room for you, you don't need to go to state prison. We're going to put you on probation, and you promise to be good. How do you calculate? Have you factored in that population, how large that could be?
Well, we've taken a look at, and I'll let Chief Lopez talk a little bit about some of the N3 population, but we have taken a look at, there is an option that the court has under the new sentencing laws that allows for a split sentence. That's an individual that would ordinarily have gone to state prison, but under the new law, we cannot send them to state prison. But the judge will sentence them to a certain amount of time in the county jail. Let's just say if they get a 5-year sentence, the judge says 2 of those years will be served in the county jail, and the remaining 3 will be on probation. Yes, we've planned for that population right now. We are aware of about maybe 100 and 150 individuals that have received such a sentence, and we're still working on getting better numbers on that particular population. But then there's also the possibility that other judges will take a look at a realignment and say, well, how can I best determine that an individual is going to receive some, if I send them to jail, are they going to, for whatever reason, be released early? And again, I don't want to get into the details of that. That's for Chief Lopez. So, but some judges, and we hear it anecdotally, and that some may decide, okay, I'd rather just go in and put this person on normal probation, and we could see our numbers increase in that sense. So we've created a baseline, and it's still too soon to tell, but we've created a baseline so we can determine how much of our population has increased, apart from the split sentencing, so that we can determine what impact AB 109 has had on just how judges are sentencing individuals. But we have requested staffing because we anticipate our population increasing, and we've requested staffing in that regard as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And again, this may be jumping the gun on what else you have to say, but I'm hoping that you can also integrate into your talk what would be, at the end of, say, a year, 18 months, what would be considered a successful implementation of AB 109, and what factors might judge it not to have been as successful?
Well, success oftentimes in these types of endeavors is measured by recidivism, and as it will take some time for us to get recidivism numbers, but as you know, the state currently has a 70% recidivism rate. We obviously believe that we can do much better than that, so a reduction in the recidivism rate would be considered success. But given the fact that we're in the first year of this rollout, and this is a major paradigm shift for us, while we are familiar with this population, because out of the 53,000 individuals we currently have on probation, we have 17,000 of those 53,000 that wouldn't even qualify for this program. Their offenses would not, are such a nature that they would not qualify for this program. So we're familiar with the population, but because of the manner in which this needs to be rolled out, and the laws that govern how we do things, and the new court rules, and they're not parolees, they're not probationers, it's a whole new system that has to be developed. The way that we have to request a bench warrant, where we used to do a 1-page document, we now do a 6-page document. We had to introduce the probable cause hearing process, and not every county is doing that, but one of the things that currently exists in the state system as a result of Morrissey versus Brewer is the due process that individuals are supposed to have if we are considering revoking their supervision. We wanted to play it safe, so the probation department determined to do a probable cause process. So one of the ways that we will measure our success in the first year is taking a look at our implementation plan and determining whether or not we were able to put all those components in place to be able to have the kind of apparatus we need and the infrastructure that we need to successfully roll out this program. That includes getting all the staff trained, enhancing the collaborations that we currently have, rolling out the cognitive behavioral therapy, and getting the right people into those systems. We will look at success in terms of how many revocation processes that we have to go through, because while recidivism normally looks at new arrests and convictions and that kind of thing, another public safety measure is, well, how compliant are the individuals that we have on supervision? For example, are they reporting to the probation officer the way that they should? Are they going to the services that we have prescribed for them? When we do all of those assessments, we'll develop this case plan that says, okay, this person needs mental health counseling, they need substance abuse counseling, they need other services. So when we make that determination, then how many people are getting from referral to actual availing themselves to the services. And I might add that those services would be a condition that we add. It's not optional for them. It would be a condition that we add and something that we will enforce with regards to their going to these services. So those are some ways that we would measure our success. And it is interesting you posed that question to one of the charges that we've been given by the board, even at the last board meeting, was to we've been providing reports relative to numbers and that kind of thing, but the board is more interested in the efficacy of the program. What are some of the ways that we are measuring components of the program that would demonstrate that we've had some success? And we actually have a meeting Thursday to kind of change the template of our report so that we can capture that information that really tells the story, good or bad, as to what the implementation of AB 109 has done.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me give you some specifics for Lancaster and Palmdale. With regards to our numbers, currently the city of Palmdale has 79 individuals that are, and these statistics are as of today, January the 3rd. We have 79 individuals that are on supervision in Palmdale. In Lancaster, there are 130 for a total of 209. The gender breakdown, Palmdale, there are 63 males, 16 females. Lancaster, 102 males, 28 females. And in terms of the way that we've been able to try to project what your population may be by the end of this fiscal year, by June 30th, if we continue at the rate that we're going now, you'd be at about 540 individuals at the end of the year. I mean, that can change, obviously, but as we extrapolate the numbers out, we see about 540 at the end of the year.
Okay.
And what I'll do now, just very quickly, I think we talked about, in question one, we talked about the estimate of individuals that are in the Antelope Valley. I think we addressed question number two relative to the housing assistance. There was a question regarding whether or not they will be eligible for Section 8, and the answer is no. No, they aren't. I mean, there are no federal prohibitions, but the state and county commissions have determined that they are not eligible for the Section 8 subsidies. I think we talked a little bit about number three, about the question addressed the number of individuals that would be in the Antelope Valley, and would you receive a disproportionate number of individuals? Again, we don't determine where they live. We just take the information they provide us, and if that's valid, then they are free to live where they say they will live. We just, again, make sure that that's a valid address. Question four was, will the former inmates receive welfare benefits, and what amounts they are eligible to receive, general relief, and those types of things? I'm not sure about what the amounts are, but they are eligible to receive assistance in that manner. Question 5 addressed what continuing education and or job training programs are available locally. And again, the way that we're addressing that is through the sole source contract. There is a employment component, but I will tell you that even though we have that contract in place, it has still been very, very difficult to find employment for individuals with felony convictions. And as you know, in the current job market, you have college graduates that have no criminal history that are having a very difficult time being placed. Periodically, we are able to cultivate relationships with the construction industry who will have some set-asides for individuals that may have had this type of history. But it is part of our contract, but we have no guarantees as to what percentage of individuals that we can have placed in employment. I gave you the gender breakdown as requested in number 6. There was a question regarding the impact on public schools, health care, mental health services. On the public schools, not sure, but on mental health services and all of the other community-based services, there will be an impact as individuals would demonstrate mental health needs, but it shouldn't be drastically different than what you have experienced previously, because these individuals that are being paroled are the same individuals that have been being paroled historically. And in this particular sense, again, the supervision entity has changed, but the fact of them coming back in the community has not changed. So those numbers shouldn't be radically different. If they weren't coming back to us, they would be coming back and being supervised by parole. So those numbers shouldn't be radically different. But again, in terms of funding, the state has set aside some monies for treatment, and the funding formula they use is $2,275 per released person for a period of 18 months. Is it adequate? Absolutely not. You can have some very high-profile mental health cases that can absorb that money in a little of no time. So, no, we don't believe the funding is adequate, but that's what it is. The way that we have done it so far this year is we took the $18 million that was set aside for treatment, and it was divided 3 ways. A third to the Department of Public Health for substance abuse treatment, a third to the Department of Mental Health for mental health services, and the probation department we received a third for the sole source contract and the other services that mental health and public health do not provide. Number 7 asks about the when state inmates are shifted from parole supervision to the county probation, what will the caseload ratios be? And I think I talked about the caseload sizes. Number 8, what assurances does the public have that inmates deemed to be low risk to public safety are truly vetted against criminal histories rather than just the crime or crimes they are currently incarcerated? And I talked about that a little bit. Even though we get this packet from CDCR, and it will have the criminal history in it. We will run a criminal history again just to make sure we capture everything. But we look at that information, we look at the assessments that we perform, we try to look at every piece of information that we can find on this individual to make a determination as to how they are going to be supervised and what level we think they need to be supervised. And just to kind of give you just some insight, and even though I talked about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, as we've had 3 months worth of experience with these individuals, we are contemplating, and we see the need for even creating possibly an ultra-high caseload at a smaller rate for some of those special cases that we know maybe would be better served on a caseload size of 1 to 20, 1 to 25. That's just something that we're thinking through, but we'll see how that goes as we talk about it further. Number 9 asks, as the program goes forward, who is directly accountable to the cities and communities for addressing and correcting problems and complaints. I'll be happy to take on that role. Any questions, problems, concerns that you have, feel free to direct those to me, and I will ensure that they are addressed as it relates to the probation department, and I'll leave the Sheriff's Department to Mr. Lopez. Question 10, the City of Lancaster, through diligent community safety programs, has vastly reduced crime rates in recent years. How do you assure the people of this city that the realignment will not increase the crime rate as an unintended consequence? And we have no way of assuring that the crime rates will not increase. I will not stand before you and suggest that they will not increase. As a matter of fact, and I think, Anna, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this, but Anna will say something about this momentarily, but I can't tell you that the crime rates won't increase. I will tell you that you have stakeholders, you have individuals that are impacted by this on the government side, the Sheriff's Department, all the law enforcement agencies, the mental health, public health, the probation department. We're all working together to do everything we can to throw a net around these people, provide the services that they need, to do everything we can to impact them positively so that we can see a reduction in the recidivism rate. But I can't tell you that that's not. There's so many unknowns. There's so many other factors that we attempt to anticipate, but there are just many things that we cannot, that, there could be a spike. There could be other issues that that could adversely impact public safety. And the final question, if misdemeanor offenses are getting little or no jail time, what is the incentive for misdemeanors to not commit crime again? And we don't know that this is in fact the case. There has been no indication yet that there will be early release of misdemeanors, and again, I'll leave that for Chief Lopez to address. But that concludes my presentation. And again, if there are questions that I could answer, I'd be very happy to do so.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
As it relates to Morrissey, now, you're stating that this group of individuals that are participating in this program, whether it be N3s or the releases for prison, are exclusive from the normal probation process for revocation. Is that going to be a significant financial impact, though, to deal with that, as far as what you would normally do in a revocation process for probation versus a parole release individual? And does that, and secondary to that, does that open or set precedents for the rest of your probation revocation for Morrissey?
Well, there is a process for regular probation, and it's not a Morrissey process per se, but there is a violation process where they can have witnesses. There's a review by the court. The probation officer has to make a case for why they feel the probation needs to be revoked. But relative to this population, yes, there is a financial impact. That impact has been funded out of our the AB 109 allotment. We wrote it into our plan, so it is funded. We are currently we have a probation director that is the lead hearing officer. We have hired retired probation officers to be hearing officers, so we try to do it as economically as we possibly could. It doesn't necessarily have to set precedent in terms of how we're doing this for the other probationers, because this is an entirely different population. It may set precedent for the other counties, because there are counties who chose not to do it, but because as you know, the state was impacted with numerous lawsuits as to how they dealt with individuals, and we just thought it instructive and wise for us to allow for a structured due process if we're going to take away a person's freedom. So while it wasn't legislated, we thought it the better part of sagacity to do so. Yeah. Any other questions?
One last comment. I took in an awful lot of information that you gave us. I was wondering if you might be willing to come back in 6 months, 9 months to tell us,
Oh, absolutely.
after there's been a, longer period of time in order to see, full impacts.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be honored to do so.
Okay, really would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're also pleased to have with the County Sheriff's Department to speak to us.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for your invitation to come and address the Lancaster Vitalization Commission. On behalf of Sheriff Baca, I was with him yesterday evening at the press conference regarding the West Hollywood arsonist that was arrested, and I told him, I made mention of him, that I was going to be coming up here. He sends his best regards, and again, wanted to, he reiterated to me that in the one question that says, who's ultimately responsible, that would be me. So he wanted me to, he made clear of that during our conversation. So I said, yes, sir. Now, one of the things that is that I wanted to in some of my comments before the meeting began, and I wanted to have an opportunity to explain as best as I could to how did we get here? How did this all transpire? And I think that may be a little bit helpful. And Deputy Chief Bingham was so comprehensive that hopefully my comments won't be as long. I don't know what the time span for your meeting is, but I'll certainly stand here and answer as many questions as I can. But let me just give a quick snapshot of how we got here and why this AB 109 transpired. And this is just some of my research and my career in law enforcement. As you know, there's everybody who gets sentenced to, as for a felony, you commit a crime, robbery, burglary, arson, rape, murder, you're sentenced to a felony, which is more than 1 year incarcerated. You go to state prison. Anything less than a year is county jail. Now, there's some overlap. You can be sentenced for a felony, but sentenced for as less than a year and do your time in county jail. Serious crimes, go to state prison. Not so serious crimes, go to county jail. And while you're waiting being sentenced, you stay in county jail. There are 33 state prisons in the state of California. You know that because you have one of them in your neighborhood. I live in Chino. I have one in mine. So I know exactly how you feel. My home sits about half mile from the northern fence line of California Institute for Men in Chino. So I know exactly how you feel. There are currently, and as you know, there's 33 state prisons, from Pelican Bay up in the northern part of California all the way to Imperial County and Calipatria, and of course your state prison here in Lancaster. As you know, over the last decade and in the 32 years of my career in law enforcement, that overcrowding has been an issue. The state of California, California Departments of Correction and Rehabilitation, which is a state agency, not a county agency, not a federal agency, a state agency, was sued and is now under a consent decree by the California Supreme Court to reduce their inmate population. Up till just October 1st, when AB 109 took effect, there were 150,000 inmates in the state of California, in its state prisons, in the 33 state prisons. 150,000. They were at, and I don't recall the exact number, but I believe they were at 185% of capacity. Any facility, any jail has a rated capacity. This auditorium has a rated capacity. It's based upon square footage, exits, space, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine, if you will, if there's only 100 seats in this auditorium, and I know there's more, but just for a moment, imagine that there was 100 seats in this auditorium, and 185 people came in and wanted to take a seat. Obviously, it's unsustainable. AB 109 came into effect to correct that problem, signed by the governor in April of this year, saying that now the state of California was under legal mandate to reduce its population to 135% of its rated capacity. That's why we have AB 109 and AB 117. Now, how do you do that? And in plain as English as I can tell you is, if you have too many people in the building, in this room, you limit the people coming in the front door and you open up the back door and let some of those people out. Now, understand that there's up to, beginning in October, there's 150,000 people in California state prisons, 33 state prisons. What you do is, there's three things that AB 109 did. It created non-sexual, non-violent, non-serious offenders who were sentenced from county jail. You're arrested here in Lancaster for robbery, armed robbery. Then you're going to go to state prison. You're arrested for rape and convicted of rape, you're still going to go to state prison. If you're arrested and convicted for one of those non-sex, non-serious, non-sex related offenses, burglary, or let's say, for example, a narcotics offense, instead of going to state prison, you will now do your sentence in county jail. So again, that's limiting the people going to state prison, reducing the people coming in the front door of state prison. Now, obviously, that's going to impact county jail, and I'll address that in a moment. If you are currently in state prison, remember one thing: 98% of everyone who is in state prison will at some point in time in their life be released and come back to their city of residence. Everybody except your life without possibility of parole or death penalty, you're going to get out someday. 98% will be released. So, of that population who will be released, if you were in there for a non-sex, non-violent, non-serious offense, AB 109 stated that you're now in this classification of persons that can be released early, and now not just be released to the street, but now be released to the care and custody of the Los Angeles County Probation Department. As Deputy Chief Bingham mentioned, there are now 58 additional agencies, 58 counties, and each county in the state of California, probation is the lead agency for realignment, assisted obviously in great part by the Sheriff's Department, but the lead agency is in fact Chief Powers. The lead person is the Chief of Probation. Each of those persons now that would have already been released or would have been released anyways from state prison, who fell in that category, they were not convicted of a serious sex or violent felony, now are a PSP, post-released supervised person. When you get released from state prison for a felony, a serious felony, murder or rape or robbery or something, when you're released, you're on parole. When you're released from county jail, you're on probation. This law created the third thing, again, non-nons going to state prison, those people being released being the second, and it created a PSP classification. They're not on parole, they're not on probation, but now you are a PSP, a post-release supervised person. That's exactly what AB 109 did, and AB 117. Now, how does this, why am I here? Part of the law enforcement component for realignment was to develop a team of deputies who were the compliance team. The sheriff placed this organization, this new unit, under the Cops Bureau. That is under my command, which is in Field Ops Region 2. As you know, Chief Tyler is the Division Chief of Field Ops Region 1. My division is all the southern stations, Compton, Century, South LA, Carson, West Hollywood, Lomita, and all that. I also have the gang team, and I have Cops Bureau under my command. This parole compliance team is under Cops Bureau, even they're going to be assigned here to the Antelope Valley, but they're under my command, but working in direct coordination with Captain Johnson and Captain Denham at Palmdale Station. That's why I'm here. So hopefully that provides just a brief synopsis of what AB 109 was and what we got here, why we got here. Eventually the goal is to reduce that population in state prisons to 135%, but that's the state's problem. How does this impact us? In two ways. One, everybody now who is getting sentenced for a non, who would normally go to state prison, now going to go to county jail. Currently, we have in our county jail system a rated capacity of approximately 22,000 beds. We have a population, I haven't checked it for a couple of weeks because that's not my direct area of responsibility, but we have approximate 17,000 population currently in Los Angeles County jail system. So we do have beds available. And obviously, we open beds, we open different parts of the jail. That's obviously a funding issue, and that's the Sheriff's Department's dilemma at this point. The second way that it impacts the County of Los Angeles is now the population. As Deputy Chief Bingham mentioned, there's approximately 3,400 men and women who have been released from state prison and are now this PSP population. Here's how it rings out in the County of Los Angeles. There are 34% of that population are in the city of Los Angeles. Let me back up. Everybody who's been released, we have an address with the vast majority of them. We know exactly which jurisdiction they live in. We geocode every single one that we know. That when, at least if they give us an address, we geocode them and we know where they're supposed to be or supposed to be residing. 34% reside in the city of Los Angeles and are in the direct jurisdiction of the Los Angeles Police Department. 25% reside in the LASD jurisdiction, meaning all the 24 patrol stations of the County of Los Angeles. About 23% reside in independent cities, Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, Santa Monica, Torrance. They reside in those law enforcement jurisdictions. 11% are unknowns. When you're released from prison, you could get paroled, you can get probation, you can get released as a PSP and not have an address. You can be a transient. If you served your debt to society and finished your sentence, fulfilled your sentence, there is no requirement that you have a home. So we have about 11% are unknowns. We do not know where they live. They could be living on a street corner, on a bus bench, underneath an overpass, or someplace where they just have not declared an address. Obviously, that's where the services come into play. Our job is to try to find them someplace to get them back on the, to integrate with society. The one question I think Commissioner Harris has that can they go someplace else? And about 7% have requested that their PSP status be reallocated to some other place other than Los Angeles County. About 7% is our number right now. What else? Let me put this in perspective just a bit. And I know that the numbers, if it's 130 in Lancaster and 79 in Palmdale, and to be clear, the vast majority in sheriff's jurisdiction, the majority of persons that are in this PSP classification are in the Antelope Valley. About 39% of that 700 as of December the 31st, the end of the calendar year, we had 779 released into the LASD jurisdiction, Sheriff's Department jurisdiction. 39% of those reside in Zone Number 1, which includes the Antelope Valley, or Palmdale, Lancaster, and Santa Clarita Valley. Santa Clarita Valley, I think, as of January 31st or December 31st, had 16. As Chief Bingham mentioned, Lancaster had 130 and Palmdale had 79. So obviously there is a disparity. There is a greater number of persons of PSP status who are residing in Palmdale and Lancaster. Because we've seen that number grow and remain consistent here in the Antelope Valley, we are going to dedicate more resources from my parole compliance team to the Antelope Valley. Let me tell you just strictly about that. We are, or will have, at the end by March, 50 deputy sheriffs throughout the county of Los Angeles whose sole responsibility will be to monitor the PSP population. They're divided up into 5 teams, and effective January 1st, I requested a second team here in the Antelope Valley. So you'll have in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 deputies whose sole responsibility will be to do address verifications when they say, I'm going to live at 123 Main Street in the city of Lancaster. We'll have deputies who will be able to confirm that they, in fact, that is a residence, and they, in fact, are supposed to be there, or supposed to go there, or allowed to go there. We're going to be doing, if they don't show up for their meetings with their appointments with probation, they don't show up to their narcotics classes, their anger management classes, their job training, their education classes, we will go there to find out why. And when they abscond, when they stop showing and go off the grid altogether or reoffend, we will be there to find them, to rearrest them, and take them back into custody. That is our job. And again, we're going to leave that team up here for probably a couple of months. So you'll have, in fact, instead of one team, you'll have two teams. That is essentially, and hopefully that, I know that's a lot of information. We have, in fact, lived this since April. We've been preparing for it since April. We have, obviously, we have the largest county in the state of California. We have the largest population of inmates. Of the 150 that I mentioned that are in state prison, 33% come from Los Angeles County. 33% will return to Los Angeles County. And, I wanted to point out one thing, and I know these numbers may be alarming to people in the community, but let's put this in perspective. Currently, there are 28,000 parolees residing in the county of Los Angeles. 28,000. These are 28,000 people that have gone to state prison and returned to the county of Los Angeles. 4,000 of them are absconders, meaning that we don't know where they are. Again, that's under the jurisdiction of California Department of Corrections Rehabilitation, but once they're listed as absconders, the warrant's put in the system, and we do our best to find them and bring them back to custody. So my promise to you is that obviously this is a plane that's already taken off. It took off October 1st, and we're still building it while it's in flight. It is difficult. It is challenging. Sometimes it is a little frustrating, but we haven't spoke since the holiday, but generally speaking, we either myself and Deputy Chief Bingham, we see each other 2 or 3 times a week and certainly either have meetings or in conversations on the phone. So we are doing our best to coordinate. And just let me leave you with this. Is one of the things that I know that public safety is Sheriff Baca's primary responsibility. While we are focused on, obviously, returning this population, this PSP population, to active members of society, giving them every opportunity to correct their behavior, correct their history, go to classes, get training, get the education, get all the skill set that they need to reintegrate with the community. We also have a duty for public service. And if they reoffend, if they recidivate, then obviously our job is to bring them back into custody. I'm be more than willing to take as many questions as you wish to put forth.
This is, and I'm not sure who best to answer this question. It occurred to me with a number of these statistics, it's making me wonder, are there sufficient beds, whether they be county or state beds, to house the normal level of incarcerated or folks convicted of serious crimes?
Currently now, we have not reached our maximum capacity. If I may have mentioned, we have a 22,000 bed population. Right. It's actually, operationally, it's closer to about 20,000. We have about 17,000 people in custody as of now. Currently, I don't know what the percentage release time is, but obviously not everybody does 100%. Even state prison inmates, it's a 2 for 2. It's essentially 50% of the time in state prison that you're released. If you do 5 years, you're only going to do 2.5. You're sentenced to 10 years, you're only going to do 5. In county jail, and I don't know what the percentage is now, but I know that it's less than 50%. So we do have an early release program. Obviously, that we are looking at a number of things. One is we have the available bed space in the event that our population increases, but we do have a maximum that we can't go over, or else we'll be in violation of court order. The other thing that is being anticipated is to open up the fire camps. We have the potential, I think it's 4 or 5 fire camps with the total population of about 4,000 beds that we can open up. Now, obviously, these are people that currently you see during the fires that fire suppression and firefighting efforts. So we have that population that we can utilize the existing vacant fire camps now in the county of Los Angeles. They're looking at a number of other things. One of the other things that I didn't touch on is education-based incarceration. The sheriff's vision, and currently now every county jail facility in the county LA County Sheriff's facility has education-based incarceration. This program started a few years ago, where we are doing life skill classes, parenting classes, all from the day that people are being incarcerated. It's a sheriff's vision. From the first day of your incarceration, whether you're there for a month, 6 months, or a year, is that you will have mandatory classes for life skills and narcotics rehabilitation, parenting, all those different skill sets that sooner or later you're going to be released from custody, and that you will be, our preparation for your release doesn't begin the day before you get released. It should begin the day of your incarceration. So that's one of the visions of the sheriff, and we have them in each facility, and as the sheriff likes to say, it's always 100% attendance, so, for all these classes.
Let's see, and then also in the 3 months, and I know this is awful early to see any specific trends, are there any obvious trends developing from this change that's taking place?
Well, as we've seen, a couple that come to note. One is that the Antelope Valley has a higher number, percentages. Again, this Zone 1, there's 5 zones that we divided up the County of Los Angeles, Zone 1 being Santa Clarita and the Antelope Valley. As I mentioned, as of December 31st, there were only 16 PSPs in the city of Santa Clarita, whereas opposed to 70 in the city of Lancaster. So that is a disparity. And again, as Deputy Chief Bingham mentioned, if that's where they declare they're going to live, we can't prevent them from doing so. However, we can augment our law enforcement services with an additional team. Another trend that I saw was that 16% of those inmates being released are female. The state prison population now only has a 6%, 8% female population. So there's a greater percentage of females. Now, you might think that there's a couple reasons. One, most of them are for narcotics-related, domestic violence, maybe some non-serious, non-sex-related offenses. So I think there were probably some of the lower-level offenders that were easier to release. So I think we've seen a little bit of disparity. About double the number of state population have actually been released into our custody now. And that's about it right now of some of the trends that we've seen. Again, we're statistic-driven, and we're looking at these. I look at these on a daily basis. I log on to our lead system and my reports from my personnel.
I guess another trend, I know it's been heading down the last few years, and we're very pleased with that, and that's the crime statistics. I know 3 months is way too short a period of time to glean any long-term repercussions. Do you see anything developing there, or is it just too early to tell?
Well, obviously, the Antelope Valley, Lancaster in particular, the city of Lancaster, because of the support of the community, support of organizations and such as this, and the city government have reached historic levels of public safety. And the sheriff, and I know Captain Johnson, we see each other every Monday at the gang meeting that sometimes I co-host or host, and we go over the last week's activity throughout the County of Los Angeles. Each captain gives a report about not only gang activity, but Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. Our goal is to maintain the level of public safety that the city of Lancaster has enjoyed in the last number of years. Again, this is not a new population. It's a new classification, but not a new population. One of the things that we've always done in the Sheriff's Department, and in each station captain, as a former station captain, that we would do is we would monitor our parolees. Again, each one of these people that are in this PSP status, we geomap. If there's a crime that goes, or a series of burglaries that start up in an area, a series of thefts, car burglaries, residential burglaries, guess who the first sets of population that we're going to go look for? The parolees, which we've done historically, and sometimes the PSP population as well. We've photographed them. We know where their house. They know us. They know they're going to be watching them. So that's part of, again, our whole purpose is to get them to succeed. To be sure, we can't build our way out build jails to build our way out of the crime problem, and we cannot arrest our way out of the crime problem. We must do our best to help them reintegrate lawfully in society, and that's the sheriff's vision.
Okay. And just to be fair, since I asked this of the probation department, the funding that's associated with the increase in workload for the sheriff's department, has that been met by a commensurate increase in dollars for?
No.
You're shaking your head no.
No, and I'll tell you why. And let me just give you the statistics that will bear this out. We believe, currently, I have 30 deputies who are assigned to the PSP, 24 deputy sheriffs, 5 sergeants, and 1 lieutenant. Between now and the end of the fiscal year, in July, June 30th, I will have 50 deputy sheriffs. It sounds like a lot, but by that time I will have approximately 8,000 or 9,000 PSPs. From July 1st of 2012 till June 31st of 2013, I will have 12,000 more in the County of Los Angeles. We will have 12,000 more PSP population during that time. Now, some of those people will start to fall off and now be, if they have successfully reintegrated, not reoffended, they will drop off and no longer be in this PSP population, just like people end their parole, their conditions of parole, or end their conditions of probation. This PSP population will hopefully one day not be a PSP person. They will not be on probation. They will not be on parole. They will not have post-release conditions. And so now they will not be our direct problem, if you will, or direct person that we're going to be watching. But we believe that between now and July 1st of next year, we're going to have 9,000. Between now and that and the end of 2013, we believe we'll have another 20 or 12,000 more, potentially. If that number seems about right. So, in answer to your question, now I may have about another 25 or 30 people, but even if I had 100 deputy sheriffs, which I don't think I'm going to get, it would be insufficient to properly supervise potentially 20,000 PSPs in the County of Los Angeles, the 4,000 square miles of the County of Los Angeles.
Okay, just so I'm not misunderstanding either, the 50 deputies that will be monitoring this population of 20,000, a number of them are new hires?
No, sir.
None of them are new hires?
None of them are new hires.
So they've been removed from other areas of work?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now let me clarify that, because you're saying, well, wait a minute, I had 100 deputy sheriffs and now I have less because that are patrolling Lancaster. Obviously, currently we believe that, and it's my understanding that there's going to be as many as 8 academy classes that are going to be going through the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Academy in this calendar year. I think one that already graduated, one that is just getting ready to start. With that new influx of personnel, they're going to be going to the jail, deputies from the jail, traditionally as we have done for centuries on the Sheriff's Department. They will go to patrol, become patrol-trained deputy sheriffs. We will be hand-selecting some of those personnel to become part of the compliance teams, mostly from within the region. So even though I may get a body for my team and I may take that person from Captain Johnson's station, I'm going to replace them with another deputy at Captain Johnson's station.
I see.
Part of the reason for that is that the PSP person, he already knows this area. Just like we normally, the cops team members come from within your station who work in this area. My gang detectives who come to my bureau, generally, if they're from Lancaster or the Antelope Valley, they will remain in the Antelope Valley. So part of that is they may transfer from one bureau or one division to another, but our desire is to keep them in the same area.
I see. Okay. Any other questions of members? Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. First of all, is there any discussion going on as it relates to GPS on sex offenders at this point for PSPs?
There will not be, well, again, one of the conditions of PSP is their current offense was not that they were not a sex offender, meaning they didn't fall within 290 of the penal code. Now, are there sex offenders that have been paroled? Absolutely. They're part of that 28,000 population that I mentioned earlier. They fall under CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. The probationers, I don't think you have any active 290 registrants, and again, of this population, I do not believe that there are any in this population, but I can't say for certain. We have that ability to monitor them much more closely in correlation with probation's directive. We do essentially three things. We do the address verifications when we know that they're coming out and going to live at 123 Main Street in the city of Lancaster. If they're no-show with any program that they're supposed to be attending or completing, we go out and we try to find them and find out the reason why. And then when they abscond or they fall completely off the grid, our job is to find them and bring them back to custody.
We have put a very low number, a couple of individuals on GPS, and it wasn't necessarily because they were sex offenders, but because they had such a history. And one of the exclusionary considerations for this population is that they cannot be a current mentally disordered offender. But we have had some individuals who were designated MDO in the past, and they've had, in addition to being an MDO, they had a very active criminal past, and we just thought that in some of the ones that we put on were also transient, and we just really needed to know where they were, and we thought in terms of enhancing public safety that we would use GPS for those individuals, get them stable, and then we'll consider somewhere down the line whether or not we can take a GPS off. We are using those cases.
Thank you. The second question was, in the past, we have entered into an MOU with CDCR here in the cities of the Antelope Valley not to place parolees back in the Antelope Valley, do not have a historical tie to the cities or the unincorporated county here in the Antelope Valley. Is there any way to enter into something similar in this situation? No. Okay. Thought I'd take a shot.
It was well worth it. It was well worth the shot and a valid question. And again, Mr. Chairman, it was my pleasure to come here, and I grew up in the Santa Cruz Valley, so I obviously we used to have very friends and family who live in the Antelope Valley. I'd be more than happy to come up at any given time to address this body in whatever form or fashion. Again, the guy who's responsible, that's me.
Okay. Well, you've said something, and I'm going to take you up on it. I'd like to see you back around July to the September time period to see where we are on this.
Correct. And again, whether it be this body, the City Council, Block Watch, either myself personally or a member of my staff, it's always great to get out of the office and come for a nice drive up to the Antelope Valley.
Well, we really appreciate you coming here, both yourself and Mr. Bingham, and also Captain Johnson, and really gave us I think a much more good foundation and knowledge about how this is being implemented, and not quite as scary as what we heard last month. So appreciate that.
Hopefully it was clear and concise and worth it.
It was very good. Thank you.
If I may, I just want to emphasize a couple of points that were raised through your questions and the presentations and provide a couple of clarifying points. As you can see, it's a very complex issue and a dynamic issue, and you've taken a lot of information in. I have brought along with me copies of the most recent report, which was dated December 15, that provide the second full month of realignment that I will leave with you for your leisure. This report is a comprehensive report relative to both populations and all of the other aspects of realignment. It has a statistical breakdown in the back as far as how many people were assessed for mental health care, how many people were referred for DPS social services, substance abuse care, etc. So you might find it of interest, and these reports will continue to be posted on the Countywide Criminal Justice Coordination Committee's website, and I have also a copy of their website page on realignment, so you have the website in case you wish to follow up on these monthly reports on your own in the future. on top of having us revisit with you again a few months down the road. So I will leave these reports with you. And just to be very brief, I wanted to touch on the two key issues that are of primary concern to Supervisor Antonovich, and I think what was illuminated here, and that is the fiscal constraints or the fiscal impact of realignment, as well as what its potential impact will be on crime. Touching on the budget side of it very briefly, it is envisioned as a 3-year rollout. Therefore, the $112 million for the first 9 months is what you've heard earlier. $300 million isn't expected until the very final year, the 3rd year of full implementation. As of last month, just before actually the holidays begun, we were advised by our CEO that the state was already behind in over $8 million on realignment funding for the current fiscal year. Not only are the funds inadequate, but we're also already behind in what is anticipated for the first 9 months, and we really have no guarantees or certainties about what will be allocated in the following fiscal year, next fiscal year. In addition, you heard some examples of how it is inadequate. For example, Mr. Bingham mentioned to you the mental health costs. I know the chief mentioned to you the team, the absconder team of 50 deputies. Another issue which wasn't mentioned is a special handling team. Recently, CDCR has informed probation that in cases where they have acute mentally ill individuals who require special handling in terms of transportation from the state prison system to LA County, they will no longer be providing those transportation services, and that will fall on the county, which means probation is considering requesting a special team that will handle these special handle requests in the future. And as you also heard earlier, Mr. Bingham mentioned the risk level is significantly higher in the high-risk category than what was anticipated, which equates to more staff if you want to bring those caseloads down. These are, talk about trending, these are things that we are learning from week to week, from month to month, that are going to put increased fiscal demands to successfully implement this program. So I just wanted to highlight that there are other things that are, whether intended or unintended, foreseen or unforeseen, that we are learning on a weekly basis. So these are things that we are going to monitor very closely. However, the county, as the chief mentioned, the plane is in the air and we're building it while it's in midair. The county will be held responsible for all of these costs, including liability, which in a custody setting, God forbid, a disturbance yields an inmate seriously injured, it can cost the county millions of dollars in a single lawsuit. And we are going to be tracking those types of claims as well. But the fiscal impact is a huge, huge impact, and it's expected to grow. The second piece was the crime trend piece. Mr. Bingham mentioned that I had some comments about it because we meet and we speak about these issues very frequently, and I want to make a distinction, a different distinction on the N3 population versus the PSP population that you all have heard today and know very well by now. The PSP population is a population, like it or not, who have served and paid their dues to society. These are individuals who have been convicted, who have served their time in prison, and were going to hit the pavement with or without realignment. The only distinction is the agency that is now supervising them, parole agent versus a probation officer. The N3 population is a newly convicted felon. This is an individual who has not yet paid dues to society. And when you combine this new population in our jail system with its rated capacity and all of its challenges, with parole violators who are no longer to serve their parole revocation time in prison, but rather in county jails, along with any PSPs that are violated who will also serve their revocation time in county jails, along with a new sanction that has been introduced under realignment for the discretion of probation to impose upon PSPs called flash incarceration. Flash incarceration does not require judicial intervention. It is at the discretion of probation as an immediate and short sanction of anywhere between 1 to 10 days in jail, just to get the attention of that PSP. When you factor in all of these new demands on this jail that has a fixed bed capacity, it is that N3 population and the custody piece that gives Supervisor Antonovich the greatest concern. Because these are individuals who the sheriff will be forced to release early. And if they, once released, reoffend, they may very well be released once again if they are sentenced on a non-serious, non-violent, non-sex offense. But if they are charged with a different felony that qualifies them for state prison, it is at that point that they will face the 50% time in state prison. The chief mentioned the time served. We know that misdemeanors serve approximately 20% of their time. We know that N3s will serve 50%, which will equate to 100%. In other words, if they're given a 5-year sentence, state law requires a credit of 50% for good time, work time, which means that's already immediately reduced to 2.5 years. If the sheriff can only house them for 25%, that really reduces it from 50 to 25% in the end. So in our universe, we apply 25% against 100%. But in this particular context, it's a fraction of, that fraction applies to a 50% time that has been automatically deducted. I hope I didn't confuse anybody. And I'm happy to answer questions. I know that you might have other things to do, but I'm happy to answer any questions and leave these reports for you, and we will be happy to return when you want us to.
You actually raised one I forgot to ask earlier, and maybe you might be the best source of answer on this. Somebody mentioned the pursuit of a constitutional amendment as part of the attempt to get some guaranteed funding for what is sounding a little bit like an unfunded state mandate. Is that being, are we relying on state legislature to propose this constitutional amendment, or is it being carried forward by counties throughout California that are most impacted by this development?
There are efforts underway to, the governor had promised a constitutional amendment. However, that didn't accompany the bill. The governor is still committed to pursuing that, although he is seeking a combined effort with some tax increases along with that constitutional amendment, which is going to complicate and muddy the waters in getting that amendment. The supervisor's position, as his representative, I must express to you his position. His position is that this is a primary responsibility of the state. We don't need a constitutional amendment that is going to take, even if it gets on the ballot measure for 2012 November, it is going to take yet another year before those revenues are collected and before they reach the counties. So it is not a panacea. What the governor needs to do, frankly, is take that airplane that's midair and return it back to where it was. That is ideally what he would like to see happen, is for the legislators who approved this to understand its consequences, to listen to their constituencies, to listen to their sheriffs, their probation chiefs, and undo what's been done. There are other alternatives available to the state. For example, you asked about bed capacity, and the chief mentioned fire camps. They are limited, the fire camps are limited, and eligibility is limited. To be in a fire camp, you cannot have medical issues, mental health issues. You must be sentenced to a minimum, we must have you for a minimum of a year, if not 2 years, to make the fire department's training, the sheriff's department's training worthwhile, and to get from you the skills that you have been trained to serve with. And not everybody is physically able to perform the tasks required in a fire camp. The state had community correctional facilities. These facilities are both publicly operated and privately operated. The state was contracting with those facilities up until realignment. In addition, the state is contracting with out-of-state facilities. They have approximately 10,000 inmates in out-of-state facilities. What is important about those options that are only available to the state, but for a piece of it that they allowed for the counties to exercise, is that they cost a fraction of what it costs the state to have someone in its own prison and what it costs the county to incarcerate someone in our jail. Those are the sorts of options that the state could have expanded upon, and the county could certainly utilize as an option as we manage our growing jail population. However, we are limited in what we can exercise under AB 117, which was a cleanup legislation after AB 109. It limited the counties to public community correctional facilities and not private. So there's a little bit of room there, but why not give the counties full access to the tool shed that the state exercised? Or why not just keep the function and expand on those less costly options, because those options include liability. Those bed costs include liability, which sometimes can be astronomical.
Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Who may I leave the report with?
Right here.
Okay.
Okay, with the new year, a certain amount of restructuring is going to be occurring with the commission. We're going to have Patty Garibay acting as liaison for the city. She's going to have admin support from Brenda Gamlowski, if I pronounce that correctly. And we're going to have the recording secretary, Linda Broderius. Why does everybody have a name like mine? I like Brett Banks. Okay, we'll have additional staff support from Lee DeRico, and our advisor will be Kelvin Tainatongo. And they're going to take charge of the next item, and this is goal-setting discussion. It'll be led by Patty and Brenda. Thank you very much.
Sure. Sure.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Welcome to 2012. Happy New Year. This was a hard act to follow, but as you know, you've been focusing a lot on Section 8, probation. We'd like to start this new year off with looking at your purpose as a commission and your goals for the new year. So we'd like to look at the energies, spending your energies on refocusing, strengthening neighborhoods, and figuring out what you can do to help in those energies and strengthen neighborhoods. So we've looked at your purpose, and we've kind of modified it a little bit. And what we want to do is bring resources. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. We'd like to continue the efforts that are already out there. We've got the community-based organizations. We've got organizations, agencies, state, county, and federal agencies that have come to you before and presented to you. We'd like to continue those works, bringing them to you, sharing their works with you. There's a lot of works that have been done that are successful, and we'd like to continue those efforts with your assistance and leadership. Your mission is to empower residents to help themselves, basically, to make them accountable. So we'd like to continue bringing the tools to you and continue bringing the education to you and staff so that we can continue those efforts and work cohesively with the agencies and the community-based organizations that are already out there. So there's several goals that we've put in place with your direction, and it's a four-pronged approach to promote health, safety, sustainability, and economic vitality of the neighborhoods and the community. And those goals, Patty will introduce to you more, but they include the community-based organizations, again, the agencies, both county, state, and also federal, the vision plans that the city has put into place, and council or other commissions have already approved. The community gatherings that also include the town hall meetings that you're familiar with, and the Unite program that you're very familiar with because you were a part of that this year. So let me turn this over to Patty.
All right, good afternoon, commissioners. Let me just start off by introducing, as Brenda mentioned, one of the things that we really want to emphasize this year is introducing you guys to a lot of the community-based organizations that exist here in Lancaster. There's a lot of groups like Antelope Valley Partners for Health and Weed and Seed, people that are doing really good work, and we think that it would be beneficial to the commission to know who those groups are and potentially partner with these groups in the future. So that would be our first goal. There's also community and neighborhood plans that have already been established. Some of those include the master plan for bikes and trails, the design guidelines created by the Architecture and Design Commission, community and wellness homes that were established through partnerships with community-based organizations, and also neighborhood stabilization programs that are currently offered by our housing department. We'll also, as Brenda mentioned, continue to provide presentations such as the ones we had this afternoon, which will continue to educate all of you and all of us on some of the programs that are offered through the county and the the county, the state, and the federal guidelines. Vision plans. There's actually a lot of vision plans that have already been put in place by our housing department. They've worked on these for several years, and basically this is actually the North Downtown Transit Village Vision Plan, and these were created to ensure that our efforts in these different communities that we're looking at to improve, that our efforts are strategic and that we know, that we understand what these communities and neighborhoods have and what they need. And so what we're going to do this year is we're going to introduce those vision plans to all of you, because our goal is to have you guys come up with some guidelines and some ideas as to how or what neighborhoods we're going to target through our commission, and how we're going to figure that out, whether it's we're looking at neighborhoods that already have a lot of groups or community-based organizations doing some work in those areas. There's neighbors who are really excited and energetic and want to do things in their community, but you guys are all going to agree on which neighborhoods we feel are most can best benefit from our efforts. Community town halls. These are pictures from the Mariposa Town Hall that was actually held at Mariposa Elementary a few years ago. And as you can see, we had a wonderful turnout at those events. Something that we found is that the community really does like to come out and they like to give us feedback. And so one of the ways that we can really improve our neighborhoods is by actually hearing our residents and hearing what they have to say. They like to put a face to the name and have that opportunity to talk to the mayor, to talk to the sheriff's department, give them feedback and get answers to just different questions that they have. So after we determine which neighborhoods you guys are all interested in focusing our efforts in, we plan to host these community gatherings where we can hear from people and where we can also bring in our community-based organizations that you guys feel would be beneficial or could help these neighborhoods continue to succeed and do good things in their areas. Finally, Unite Lancaster. This has been one of our really successful programs here at the city, and our goal is to continue building upon that success and to really put the ball back in our neighbors' courts and to give people that ownership of their neighborhoods, to get them to propose those projects and facilitate the things that are going to improve their neighborhoods. So this year we hope to continue that project, and again we will evaluate proposals based on the potential of these projects to improve neighborhoods, to improve neighbor relations, and also to improve public safety. So in closing, I'd just like to say that Brenda and I are very excited to work with you guys this year, and we really are looking forward to continue building those partnerships both with our community-based organizations and also with our residents in partnership with all of you. So thank you. And we can take any questions, I'm sorry.
Any questions of the commissioners? Okay, I'm assuming this is in conjunction with some efforts that have been underway for a number of years concerning the monitoring of the voucher program.
Absolutely. Well, actually, the reason that we started to refocus our energies was because of the pending Section 8 lawsuit. So at least for now, we're going to focus our energies back on, this type of programming where we're actually in the communities. And once we hear some, direction in terms of where that's headed, then we'll continue to do, to focus on the voucher, the Section 8, and all those types of things.
Okay. Kind of another aspect, I think Larry was forefront on the whole issue of the prison realignment. There may be other issues in the coming year that come up, and I'd also like to see us address those type of issues that really have a community-wide impact.
Absolutely. We definitely have a very comprehensive approach as to how we want to do this. We want to, meet the community-based organizations and get them to come here and present kind of what they're doing, but it's also very important and crucial that we hear from those groups similar to who we had today to tell us about, what they're doing, what our numbers are, how we're projecting, what resources we still need. So.
Okay, so do I understand that the future will hold a sequence of meetings with various community-based organizations so we become familiar with those, and also with various city departments and the work that they're involved in?
Yes, in fact, we're intending to bring the Antelope Valley Partners for Health to you next month, as well as the impact homes. And I think they've come here before to present to you, but they've been doing a lot of work in the community, health-wise and otherwise. So we'd like to bring them back to give you an update as part of this new program. And let me point you back to the purpose. We want to make sure that you know that we're not cutting out public safety. It's similar to the community-based policing program where a lot feeds into that to make it a safe community. So we want to promote health, safety, sustainability, and economic vitality. So every community-based organization and department that we bring to you will have some input into those 4 areas to make it a sustainable, healthy, safe community.
I agree with the expansion of this, but one of the things I'm concerned about, Lee, and maybe you and Megan can help address some of this, is if we get involved in some of these community meetings and things, we're still going to probably have to address some of the things that got this commission started in the first place.
No, I agree with you, and that's what the beauty of what comes out of that is, obviously we want to make you as knowledgeable as possible as it relates to all these community issues. And as well, you hear from the constituency out there and all in your patterns and daily lives of things that are going on that need to be brought forward and addressed. The beauty of the town hall meetings, it gives us an open forum to be able to address issues as a group, okay, and really determine what's occurring in specific communities. Things that might be happening in a certain particular area and be the focus and priority for one neighborhood won't be the same as another neighborhood. And absolutely, those things are going to come to light, the issues related to housing and crime. And, we have some things to be very proud of now. We're waiting for our latest crime numbers to come out for the year end, but we're going to be significantly down again for another year here. So we're quite proud of that in spite of all the things that we heard tonight with AB 109, and also that followed right on the tail of non-revocable parole and other issues that have impacted us related to public safety. But in this community-based model, which we talked about actually when I came and talked to you before I even worked for the city, and I was still working for the county, was discussions of what that community-based model entails and how that involves law enforcement, and enforcement is just one small part of that whole coverage of services and issues that we relate to in the community. So again, those are going to come to light. As they come to light throughout this, we're going to address those. I think tonight is a perfect example, and what we've been practicing is bringing forward different agencies and entities, and again, the community-based organizations who are doing a lot of things, and so we network all those people together. So we're not duplicating, uses of resources and services out, but we bring everyone under the guise of one entity that we know where to send people for those services. We come up with a knowledgeable work base and database that provides information out there publicly. And then again, create some enthusiasm for people to again, come to commission meetings, come to council meetings, address issues as they see them, as they're taking place in their community, and bring those things to light. And, we can't be everywhere all at once, so the whole ideal behind community-based policing is involving every person in the community, regardless of what aspect of the community they're involved in, to become part of raising that quality of life that we all benefit from in our town. So.
Well, I like the idea, but I still think we got to try to keep the county's feet to the fire on, the Section 8 issues and the things that we've been doing.
Fear not. That's been a quest of mine. I think, I'm in complete agreement. I think there is a need for some education of board members, particularly this one, and I mean myself, not the other members. But one of the feelings I know several of the board members have expressed is they really want to start doing something. So beyond the education, we want to feel like we're really having an impact on the communities within Lancaster. So any ideas in that direction, I think we'll be real receptive to. Any other comments?
There is a press conference Thursday, correct, for the MLK Day. So if it's at noon, right? It changed.
AB High School.
AB High School. So if any of the commissioners are available for that, that would be good if you can be there for that, I think.
Tim? Yeah. I don't know the protocols for this, but sometime in December, I received an email, along with others, saying if you want to be back on this commission, whatever the commission is, you must reapply by, I think, December 27th was the deadline. And after thinking it over, I did not reapply. And so I will be, at some point, whenever the change is made, stepping off this commission after, 3 years. And I just thought it was time.
Okay. Well, we're going to be sorry to see you go, and I probably am going to talk to you after this meeting.
I still blew the deadline.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, last item, just brief discussion of future agenda topics. Patty, I believe I'll be getting together with you on the implementation of some of these issues on what you just got discussed. So, are there any other?
Is this available to all of us? Do you know?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Patty is.
Email?
Yeah. Do you have this, the outline in effect of the PowerPoint? Actually, I can forward the one you sent to me, can't I? Okay. I'll forward that to you guys. Okay. Any other items you'd like to see on next month's agenda? Okay.
You're going to be contacting Emilio as well, and Tracy, and talking to them.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. Good.
I would like to make sure we get a copy of what was left, though. I'd like to look through that.
I'll distribute those.
I'm sorry. Last item is public business from the floor. We request any person who would like to address the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission on non-agendized matters to complete a speaker card, and you will find speaker cards on the back table of the council chambers. Additionally, we respectfully request that you fill the cards out completely and print as clearly as possible so that, if necessary, the commission or city staff will be able to contact you either by phone or mail. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. When you approach the podium, please notice there are 3 lights. The green light comes on when you begin, the yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red light will come on when your 3 minutes are up. We ask that you be considerate of the allotted time to allow other speakers to have their 3 minutes as well. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the commission meeting, and we appreciate your cooperation. State law prohibits the Lancaster Neighborhood Vitalization Commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, I have one speaker card, David Paul.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good evening. I wouldn't have been offended if you forgot me. It was a fun night, wasn't it? First we had the deputy chief, and he gave us the level view, but I wrote some of these things. We'll do everything in our power, still working on getting those numbers. We will be focusing on, it's a tough job. Chief Lopez, I was impressed with him coming tonight, and he mentioned the sheriff. The sheriff is a person that fills me with confidence. So while I have confidence in everybody that's working in these problems, I might not have confidence that we'll actually solve them, because we're asked to do more with less money, and that's always a challenge. But before I go, I just heard one thing tonight that interested me. Somebody was talking there about the Section 8 subsidy and how you can prevent them under this law or something, if that's how it is, from getting Section 8 benefits. So, and they said that there's no federal prohibition. So it's like a state or a county ordinance or law is superseding the federal law, which I thought was the reason we can't control these things. So that was pretty interesting. That was the one takeaway I had. But thank you. Chairman, I understand what you're saying. You'd like to do something. Brenda, you're two-timing our Criminal Justice Commission here, because we're trying to do stuff too, but that's what it takes. I mean, as long as we're wanting to do something, the ball's in our court, and we're winning. So thank you. Happy New Year to y'all, and I look forward to coming again, and this is raucous here. I love it. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other business, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 6:02.
Sure. I'm sorry, I had one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patty.
It's okay. I actually just wanted to make a note of the regular meeting time. If you look at your agenda, the wrong time is listed. It says February 7th at 5 p.m. It's actually 4 p.m. It's just a typo.
Oh.
But the meeting's at 4.
All right. Thank you. And with that...